I want to play Snake Game, but in 3D. Now it turns out there are lots of 3D Snake games out there, but some of you may have noticed a very subtle problem here. That being, this isn't 3D Snake, this is just 2D Snake with extra steps. Like, okay, the models themselves are 3D, but I rate this 2.5 dimensions at best. Except this one gets like 2.7D. To me, 3D Snake means being able to move within a 3D volume, so that's what I want to make. Of course, maybe the reason that 3D Snake never caught on is because it would actually be a terrible experience. See, if the snake is in this orientation and you press up, the snake will move upwards, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it. But if the snake is in this orientation, up for the snake has become down for the player, and that's just confusing. Another problem is that parts of the field will get obscured by the snake's body, and that's no fun. So the real challenge here is to figure out how to make it a less terrible experience, and I think I know how to do that. Alright, so I'm here in Unity, and the first step is to get the snake moving forward, and fortunately that's super easy. Yeah, why are you moving down? Oh wait, no, that's my fault. Alright, just gotta put this here, and put that there. Which fortunately is super easy. Now, as cool as this is, we're still missing a couple of features, so next up we're going to need a grid and some steering. Yeah, that's coming together. And the turning looks good. Nice. Okay, so here's my plan to fix the orientation problem from earlier. Are you ready? Yep, that's it. For anyone who missed it, putting the main camera here turns this into a first-person snake game, which will make it so the player and the snake always have the same frame of reference, and that should make the controls less confusing. Woo, first-person snake, yeah! Alright, but I'm noticing a new problem now, which is that the turn happens instantly, which is really disorienting. So I added smooth turning, and that feels much better. Alright, so now that I've got some core mechanics in place, I want to make this thing actually 3D. The current grid uses a line renderer, which is actually just a single line that snakes around from point to point, and making this work in 3D was kind of a mess. But it looks like a mesh grid is probably a better tool for what I'm trying to do. So here's what that looks like. Yeah, look at the 3D grid. That's exactly what I was looking for. Okay, now the grid is 3D, but the snake only knows how to turn left and right, so it's stuck down on the bottom layer. I think I just need to add some logic to turn up and down. Should be pretty similar to this code here, except for I don't want to turn around the up axis, I want to turn around the right axis. All right, I think this should be it. Okay, so can I press up? Yes. Oh, nice. Okay. Now right. Oh wow, yeah, we got a sideways horizon. Oh, this is so trippy. Oh man, after only just a couple of turns, I've completely lost track of my orientation. Okay, start over. Okay, so if I press up, I should be looking at the sky. Okay. And now I can look at the ground. Oh, this is totally working. Oh, this is so cool. All right, so I decided it was time to make the snake look a bit more snake-like, and I also added food to collect. There are currently 1,000 nodes in the grid, so I wrote a short script to pick a node position at random and spawn food there, and I'm already starting to be really happy with this. Although a big problem that I've noticed is that since you can't see the entire grid all at once, it can be surprisingly difficult to locate the food sometimes. So I added a food indicator line that always points to where the food is, and that makes a big difference. Oh, also collecting food makes you move faster. Now I want to improve this boring gray background, and I basically only had one idea for that, which was to make it in outer space. And honestly, I think this looks really cool. Plus, a zero-G environment kind of makes sense for how the snake moves. At this point, we've got a grid and some steering, as well as food and an awesome space background. The next feature is to make the snake get longer after eating food, and I found this handy 3D snake tutorial. Wait, sorry. Hold on, I gotta fix this YouTube title real quick. Okay, go ahead. Which wasn't quite what I was looking for, since this implementation doesn't have any Z movement. But I added a modified version to my game, and here's 3D Snake. It's really neat for me to see this come together, since it was actually this mental image of the snake like twisting around itself that made me want to build this game in the first place. And this is coming along nicely, except that right now it's impossible to lose the game. You can just get longer and longer and keep playing until the heat death of the universe or something. And you can float off into space with no consequences. I mean, except that it's not very fun to play after that, but the point is that we need to make the snake die. So the game should end if the snake leaves the grid or crashes into itself. So I added some colliders so I know when to trigger a game over, and here we go. What is that? So what's happening here is when the second segment spawns in, it gets placed right on top of the head segment, and the physics engine doesn't really like that. And honestly, the easiest way to fix that is to just remove the collider on that segment, so that's what I'm gonna do. Yeah, that's looking better. Now I just gotta test the collision, and game over. All right, that seems to be working. Goodbye. Okay, I tried to take a shortcut with growing the snake earlier, and now it's causing me all sorts of problems. There's this, and it looks weird going around corners, and you can't easily speed up the whole snake at once because it just gets all stretched out like this. The new strategy is to keep a list of every node visited, and then each segment can calculate its own trajectory to the next node in the sequence, and that's looking much better. Oh, and I also finally added a score counter. At this point, the game is not finished, but it's just good enough to be playable. In fact, I kept sitting down to get some coding done, but then just playing my game instead because I was having fun. And after a fair amount of playtesting, here's what I've learned so far. First off, I think the first-person perspective works really well. It makes the controls really intuitive, and the game can be fast-paced and challenging without being frustrating. Secondly, I kinda like that you usually can't see where the target is right away. It's really gratifying to read the indicator line and figure out how to get the target in your field of view and then plan a route to reach it. I think that's fun. The whole 3D aspect is still kind of mind-bending for me. For a while, I was trying to keep track of how I'm oriented relative to the top or bottom of the cube, but I prefer to just forget about that entirely because it's hard and not very useful. Also, when you're approaching a cube face, pressing up puts your perspective on the bottom of the cube looking up, and pressing down puts your perspective on the top of the cube looking down, and I think that's kind of neat. One thing that surprised me is how quickly it becomes impossible to mentally keep track of the snake's body. It just gets too long and you're constantly changing your own relative position. The best bet is to just go where you can see the snake definitely isn't. I also occasionally found myself in situations like this where you think, oh no, I messed up and now I'm trapped. But then I would remember that I can just go in a different direction where there's more space. Okay, now it's time to talk about 240. 240 is the score I kept seeing right before I died. This is when the snake's length gets long enough to become an obstacle and I kept crashing into myself. I found that a lot of these deaths felt kind of unfair because I couldn't see that the direction I was turning would cause a collision. So to fix this, I added an option to toggle between a first-person and a third-person perspective. Funny enough, my gameplay seemed to get significantly worse after I added this, so I thought it might be a bad idea, but I got used to it and now I really depend on it. And I kind of like the additional learning curve. Okay, that's enough getting distracted. It's time for the boring stuff, which is mostly just the UI, sound design, and some bug fixing. This stuff really isn't my forte, but good enough is good enough. One detail that I like was adding a % complete to the game over screen, which tells you how long your snake is in comparison to the maximum possible length, and most of the time this will be a pretty low number, and I think that's kind of funny. Another detail is that while playtesting, I found myself looking at both the game view and the development view, so I added a zoomed out perspective to the corner here so you can see how the snake is oriented in world space. And I gotta say, all the boring stuff has really brought the project to life. I was just about ready to call this project done when I accidentally discovered that my game had a fatal flaw which I almost overlooked completely. Up to this point, I've just been timing my key presses right before they're needed, but then I learned that 2D Snake games support input queuing. Input queuing is where the game remembers your key presses and executes them in sequence. And it's helpful in situations like this because you can press up and right in quick succession to make a sharp U-turn, which gives the player more control. Adding input queuing was a really small change that makes a big difference in gameplay. Before this, it was really easy to mistime the inputs and accidentally die, which was always a bummer. Now the movement is much more predictable, and I really like the ability to plan your moves in advance. Like in this situation, you might want to press an up, down, left, right, and then you can relax for a second until the target's reached. Or how double tapping any key reverses your direction. Or how this sequence makes a kind of corkscrew shape that can be executed repeatedly. So one of the neat things about Unity is that after you've built a game, you can export it to whatever platform you want and it'll all just work. So I thought it would be a good idea to publish a mobile version of the game so you guys can try it out. And after some fiddling, I managed to get a dev build running on my phone. All right, look at that, it's here. You just plug in your keyboard and you're good to go. Oh, and I also added swipe controls in case you don't have a keyboard with you. Somewhere around this point, I realized that if I was going to make the game public, I should probably have a better snake model, but I don't know how to do that. So I hired someone who does know what they're doing, and I'm glad I did this. It's definitely an improvement on the default capsule shape.
Got it?
Got it in. Give me your feedback.
Yeah. Oh, easy.
Ooh, I love it. When it gets so long like this.
Ah! It looks so slithery now.
It does, right?
So cool. Ah!
That's good, that's good.
Why are you so controlled?
I've played this for like 10 hours. Whoa.
Whoa, that's so
That's cool. Uh-oh, uh-oh.
I'm in control. I am in control.
Whoa, that looks cool. That was really good. Yeah. In hindsight, I should have done this step much earlier because then the rest of this video would have looked way better, but I'm just making this up as I go. Alright, the coding is done now. All that's left to do is publish. If you've never published a mobile game before, allow me to walk you through the process. First, you make an account. Next, you pay a $25 publishing fee. Then you fill out like 100 questions to prove you're not a hacker. And here's a fun fact. If you want to run advertisements in your app, you have to provide a publicly accessible address. Now, I actually don't want everyone to know where I live, so no ads, I guess. Then you have to upload screenshots of your app running on various devices. But they don't count if they're the wrong aspect ratio. But what if the device you own is the wrong size? Well, I have the answer for you. Crop tool. Then you have to show what your app looks like on a 7-inch tablet and a 10-inch tablet. But what if you don't own any Android tablets, you ask? That's right, crop tool. The final step is to persuade 12 people to register as beta testers for your app. And then, after months of development and testing, you can finally wait 2 weeks to publish your app. I looked into publishing a version for iOS as well, but that's gonna cost $100 every year. So yeah, that's not happening. Alright, it's been a few weeks and my game was approved. I got some testing feedback and most people enjoyed it, except Kwang Bui, who thought it was the worst game ever. But it's available for free on Google Play and itch.io, so let me know what you think if you give it a try. And here's my high score if you want to try to beat it. Okay, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you next time.